I was 6 when my mother died. I don't remember her face. I remember the smell of the hospital, that specific mix of bleach and something sweet underneath, like fruit going bad in a closed drawer. I remember a woman with my same eyes, half open, looking at the ceiling while a machine beeped slower and slower. And I remember my grandmother, Lily, picking me up from that plastic chair, folding me into her coat that smelled like star anise and ginger, and saying in Mandarin, "You come with Po Po now." Forever. Forever lasted 22 years, until my Aunt Helen decided forever had a price tag. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories. If you're here, maybe you know what it means to lose someone twice, once to death and once to the person who couldn't wait for the death to happen. Maybe you know the particular rage of watching a thief wear your grief like a brooch. If that's you, subscribe. Not because I have answers, because I have receipts, and because the story I'm about to tell you ends with me holding the hand of the woman who destroyed my grandmother while she died knowing exactly who I was. Here's my story. I grew up in a house on Morrill Street in Detroit, in a neighborhood the city forgot to gentrify. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom with a tub that never drained right, and a kitchen where Lily Chen made magic out of nothing. She was 7 to 2 when she took me in, a widow with arthritis in both knees and a pension that wouldn't cover a parking ticket in most cities. But that house had walls thick with memory. My mother's high school diploma framed in the hallway. My drawings, every single one from age 6 to 16, taped to the refrigerator, then moved to a shoebox when the fridge ran out of space. Lily called me Zio 2 Little Bunny. Not because I was cute, because I was fast, because I hid when I was scared, because she knew, even at 6, that I was built for survival. She taught me to read in 2 languages at once. English from the library books she checked out by the dozen. Chinese from the newspapers she got from the grocery on Verner Highway, the ones with the characters I traced with my finger while she cooked. You need both, she'd say, stirring soup that simmered for 6 hours. English for the world outside. Chinese for the world inside. Never let anyone take either. I believed her. I believed everything she told me because she was the only person who never left. My father, whoever he was, left before I was born. My mother left at 26, cancer eating her from the inside while I colored at her bedside. Aunt Helen, Lily's older sister, left every Christmas dinner early, complaining about the drive from Ann Arbor, about Lily's sentimental nonsense, about the way I clung to my grandmother like a barnacle. The girl needs discipline, Helen would say, not looking at me, not coddling. Helen had no children. She had 3 exuspans, a condo with white carpet, and a job in pharmaceutical sales that paid her to convince doctors that pills were the answer to everything. She sent Lily a card every year on her birthday. Signed it Helen. Never love Helen, just Helen, like a receipt. I didn't hate her. I didn't think about her at all. She was a voice on the phone, a presence at funerals, a woman who smelled like department store perfume and looked at my grandmother's house like it was a garage sale she was too good to browse. I was wrong about everything, especially about who was browsing. I left for nursing school in Chicago when I was 22. University of Illinois, full ride, the first in my family to go to college. Lily cried at the bus station. Not the pretty crying you see in movies, ugly, heaving sobs, her hand gripping my wrist so hard she left marks. You come back, she kept saying. You promise me, Zio 2, you come back and take care of me when I'm old. I promise, Po Po. I said it like a vow, like marriage, like blood. I called her every night at 7. Sent her photos of my textbooks, my scrubs, the terrible coffee from the hospital cafeteria. She sent me care packages, homemade dumplings frozen in layers of newspaper, notes in her shaky Chinese-English hybrid. Study hard. Eat, don't be too thin. Old people need grandchildren with meat on bones. I graduated, got a job in palliative care at Northwestern Memorial. The hardest unit, the one where people go to die comfortably. I was good at it. Too good, maybe. I learned to read the rhythm of a morphine drip, to know by the sound of breathing when someone had hours left or minutes. I learned that the worst deaths aren't the painful ones. They're the lonely ones. The ones where the last face you see belongs to a stranger who forgot to check your name on the chart. I told myself I was preparing. For Lily. For the day I'd keep my promise and bring her home with me, or go back to Detroit and care for her in the house on Morrill Street, in the kitchen that smelled like star anise, surrounded by drawings she'd saved for 30 years. I was 29 when the calls started coming less frequently. Lily sounded tired, confused. She'd ask me the same question 3 times in one conversation. When are you coming home, Zio 2? I'm coming, Po Po. Soon. When are you coming home? Soon, Po, soon. I should have gone then. I should have dropped everything, gotten on a bus, and shown up on her doorstep with my nursing degree and my savings and my promise. But I was 29, and I thought I had time, and I was wrong about that too. Helen got there first. I found out from a patient. Mrs. DeLuca, A-4 ovarian cancer, stage 3. Sweet woman talked nonstop about her grandchildren. One morning while I was adjusting her Roman 4, she said, "You know, I stayed in the cutest Airbnb last month. Detroit of all places. Little yellow house with a porch swing. Had photos of a Chinese girl everywhere, must have been the owner's daughter. Beautiful place. Shame it's just a rental now." I kept my hands steady, kept smiling. "That sounds nice. What was the address?" She told me. Morrill Street, my address, my porch swing, my face on the walls. I didn't wait for my shift to end. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years, got in my car and drove 4 hours to Detroit. I didn't call Lily. I didn't call Helen. I just drove, my hands shaking on the wheel, repeating the same sentence in my head. She wouldn't, she couldn't, not my house, not my grandmother. She could, she did. The house was empty, not just of people, of everything. The refrigerator with my drawings was gone, replaced by a stainless steel model that didn't match the cabinets. The hallway where my mother's diploma hung was bare, the paint lighter where the frame had shielded it from sun. Lily's bedroom, her bed with the hand-stitched quilt, her altar with my grandfather's photo and incense sticks, was stripped to a mattress on a metal frame. A rental mattress, for Airbnb guests. I found the shoebox in the garage, under a tarp covered in mouse droppings. Every drawing I'd ever made, crumpled, water-stained, some stuck together with mold. The one of Lily and me holding hands, age 7. The one of our house with a son that had teeth, age 9. The one where I wrote "I love you, Po" in letters that slanted uphill, age 11. She'd kept them. Even when they took everything else, she'd kept them, or Helen had been too lazy to throw them away. I found Lily 3 hours later in a facility called Golden Years Assisted Living in a town I'd never heard of, 40 minutes outside Flint. The receptionist couldn't find her in the system. "We have a Jane Doe," she said, clicking through screens. "Chinese female, mid-70s. No emergency contact on file." Jane Doe, my grandmother, who had a name that meant pure and beautiful in Mandarin, who had raised me on stories of her village and her mother's dumplings, and the boat she took to America with $50 sewn into her coat. Jane Doe. They led me to a room the size of a closet. Lily was in a hospital bed, restrained with soft cuffs, for her own safety, the nurse said, not looking at me. She was 78 pounds. I know because I read the chart while the nurse was distracted. 78 pounds. Her dentures were broken, sitting in a cup on the nightstand, and they'd been feeding her pureed food from a can for months because nobody had checked why she couldn't chew. She had bed sores on her heels and her tailbone, stage 2, weeping through the thin gown they'd put her in. She didn't recognize me at first. Her eyes, my mother's eyes, were cloudy with cataracts nobody had scheduled surgery for. She looked at me like I was a nurse, like I was furniture. Then I took her hand, the hand that had taught me to write, to cook, to pray, and I said, Po. "It's Zio too, I'm here," she blinked. Once, twice. And then she squeezed my hand with a strength that shouldn't have been possible in a body that small, and she said in Mandarin, clear as a bell, "You came back. I knew you would come back." I stayed for 3 days. I fed her soup I made in a hot plate I smuggled into the room. I cleaned her sores with supplies I stole from the supply closet. I held her while she slept, her head on my shoulder, lighter than a child. On the 3rd day the administrator found me. "Family only," she said, "and the power of attorney holder has requested no visitors." Her sister, Helen Chen, the administrator looked at her clipboard. Helen Chen. Yes, she requested that her sister not be agitated by visitors. For her own good. I showed her my ID, my nursing license. I told her I was Lily's granddaughter, her next of kin, her designated caregiver since I was 6 years old. The administrator shook her head. "I'm sorry, the paperwork is clear. You'll have to take it up with Miss Chen." I tried. I called Helen 17 times. She answered once. "Maya," she said like she was greeting a telemarketer. "I was wondering when you'd find out. Your grandmother needs professional care. I did what was best. You sold her house. I liquidated an asset to pay for her care. That's what power of attorney means. You made her a Jane Doe. Administrative error, easily fixed. She's 78 pounds, Helen. She has bed sores. She can't chew because her dentures are broken and nobody checked." A pause. Then, "Guilt is an ugly emotion, Maya. You left her." "I didn't." She hung up. I drove back to Chicago that night because I had to work, because I had rent, because I was 29 and I still thought the system would protect me if I just followed the rules. Lily died 8 months later. The call went to Helen. By the time I found out she'd been cremated, no funeral, no ashes sent to me, she wouldn't have wanted a fuss, Helen said when I finally reached her. She was a simple woman. Simple, the woman who raised me in 2 languages, who worked double shifts at a factory until she was 65, who saved every drawing. Simple, I got the death certificate from the county clerk. I read it in my car, in the parking lot of a strip mall, while rain hit the windshield so hard I couldn't see the street. Cause of death: complications of advanced dementia, malnutrition, sepsis from untreated pressure ulcers. In other words, she died of neglect. She died of being Jane Doe in a facility where nobody spoke her language, where her food was mush, where her granddaughter couldn't find her until it was too late to save her. I sat in that car for 4 hours. I didn't cry, I made a list. The will surfaced 3 weeks later. Handwritten, dated 2 years before Helen took power of attorney, witnessed by the neighbor who'd since moved to Florida and a notary who remembered Lily because she'd brought him dumplings. It left everything to me. The house. The savings account, not much, $14,000, but everything Lily had. Her jewelry, her mother's jade bracelet, the photo albums I hadn't found in the garage. I hired a lawyer. Pro bono, through a legal aid clinic, a woman named Sarah who specialized in elder abuse cases and had the exhausted eyes of someone who'd seen too much. It's winnable, she said, looking at the will, but it'll take years. Helen sold the house to a shell company. The money's probably offshore by now, and she's claiming the will was written under your grandmother's declining mental state. She was fine when she wrote it. I believe you, but belief doesn't pay for depositions. We fought for 3 years. I worked double shifts at the hospital, sent every extra dollar to Sarah, learned more about probate law than any nurse should know. Helen fought dirty, claimed I'd abandoned Lily, claimed I'd stolen from her, claimed I was mentally unstable and unfit to inherit. She subpoenaed my therapy records from after Lily's death. She told the court I'd been obsessed with my grandmother to an unhealthy degree. I won. Partially. The court invalidated the power of attorney, fraudulently obtained. The judge ruled, with evidence that Lily's signature on the document didn't match any of her other signatures. They ordered Helen to repay the proceeds of the house sale. But the shell company had dissolved, the money scattered through accounts in the Caymans and Cyprus, and what we recovered was less than half of what the house was worth. Helen declared bankruptcy, moved to a smaller condo, kept her pharmaceutical sales job because apparently you can steal from your dying sister and still convince doctors to prescribe antidepressants. I should have been satisfied. I had the jade bracelet. I had the photo albums Helen had missed in her haste to clear the house. I had a check that would cover a down payment on a condo, maybe, if I was careful. I wasn't satisfied. I found out about Helen's cancer the way I wasn't supposed to. A glitch in the hospital system, a shared database, a moment of curiosity I told myself was professional concern. Helen Chen, 68, ovarian cancer, stage 2, diagnosed at University of Michigan Hospital, referred to oncology at Northwestern Memorial in Chicago for a second opinion. I worked at Northwestern Memorial. In palliative care, not oncology, but we shared the same floor, the same system, the same break room where nurses talked about their hardest cases. I heard her name before I saw the chart. Poor woman, someone said, no family, no visitors. Her emergency contact is her lawyer. I didn't plan it. That's what I tell myself. I didn't log into her chart deliberately. I was looking for another patient, and her name was adjacent, and my finger moved before my brain caught up. I didn't request a transfer to oncology. There was a staffing shortage, and I'd mentioned once that I was cross-trained, and when the opening came, I took it because the pay was better. These are the things I tell myself. They are true in the way that half-truths are true. The whole truth is simpler. I saw her name, and I wanted to be there when she fell. I wanted to watch. I wanted to be the face she saw when she realized that the universe doesn't forget, even when courts do. I got the assignment 3 weeks after her first chemo cycle. Her primary nurse was out with a back injury, and I was the float. I walked into her room with my professional smile, my name tag, my clipboard. Good morning, Miss Chen, I'm Maya. I'll be your nurse today. She didn't recognize me. Why would she? It had been 4 years since Lily's death. I'd lost 20 pounds, cut my hair, aged in the way that grief ages you, not outwardly, but in the eyes. She looked at me like she looked at all nurses. A function, not a person. You're late with my meds, she said, And this pillow is inadequate, I need another. Of course, Miss Chen, right away, I was perfect, professional, prompt. I brought her pillow, her water, her anti-nausea medication exactly on schedule. I charted her vitals with precision. I smiled when she snapped at me, nodded when she complained about the food, the noise, the incompetence of everyone around her. She had no visitors. Her lawyer came once, dropped off paperwork, left in 20 minutes. She talked about her exuspance sometimes in the rambling way that lonely people do, expecting nurses to be furniture with ears. None of them understood me, she'd say. They wanted me to be soft, to be maternal. I was never the maternal type. No, ma'am, I'd say, checking her Roman 4. I can see that. She looked at me then, sharp, like she'd heard something in my tone. But I was already moving to the next task, the next chart, the next patient. I was careful, I was patient, I was everything she'd never been. I started with the phone calls, not to Helen, to everyone else. Her emergency contact list was in her chart. 3 exuspans, 2 distant cousins, a bridge club acquaintance, a woman listed as friend with no last name. I called them all from the nursing station on night shift using my sweetest voice. Hi, this is Maya from Northwestern Memorial. I'm calling about Helen Chen. She's asked that I let you know she's been diagnosed with early-onset dementia. Yes, it's very sad. She's been quite agitated by visitors lately. Her doctor thinks it would be best to limit contact for now to avoid distress. She specifically asked me to tell you she needs rest. I'll let you know when she's feeling up to company. It was easy. Too easy. People believe what hospitals tell them. They want to believe that institutions are competent, that nurses are kind, that the system works. They don't want to think that a stranger with a grudge could pick up a phone and erase them from someone's life. Helen noticed eventually. Where is everyone? She asked after her second chemo cycle. Where's my cousin Margaret? She said she'd visit. She called Miss Chen. She said she was busy. Work, I think, and Richard, my exuspand, he sent flowers, ma'am, to the front desk. I'll check if they were delivered. They weren't. There were no flowers, there were no calls. There was only me and the silence I built around her like a wall. She got sicker. The chemo worked technically, the tumors shrank, the markers improved, but she was alone, and loneliness is its own kind of cancer. She stopped eating. Stopped watching TV. Sat in her bed, looking at the door, waiting for someone who never came. I was always there, every shift. Every night she couldn't sleep. Every morning she vomited into the basin I held. I was the one who cleaned her mouth after. The one who adjusted her blankets. The one who held her hand during the bone marrow biopsy while she screamed and I counted her heart rate, steady, steady, steady. You're the only one who stays, she said once at 3 a.m. high on Ativan. Why do you stay? Because you need someone, Miss Chen. Everyone needs someone, she cried then. Ugly, heaving sobs, just like Lily at the bus station. But Lily had cried because she loved me. Helen cried because she didn't understand why I was still there, and the not understanding was worse than the cancer. I didn't comfort her. I held her hand because that was my job. I didn't wipe her face. I didn't tell her it would be okay. I just held her hand and watched her cry, and thought about my grandmother's bedsores and the pureed food, and the name Jane Doe on a chart in a facility 40 minutes from anywhere. The recurrence came 14 months after her first diagnosis. Stage 4. Metastases to the liver, the lungs, the bones. The oncologist told her with me in the room because she'd requested I be there, her most consistent caregiver, the chart said. She looked at me when he spoke, like I could change the numbers, like my competence extended to miracles. I'm sorry, Miss Chen, I said. When the doctor left, is there anyone you'd like me to call? She laughed, a broken sound. Who? You've been here every day, you know there's no one, there's your lawyer, he's not family. She looked at her hands, the Roman 4 bruises, the thin skin. I had a sister, you know, she died. Years ago, we weren't close. I know she had a granddaughter, bratty thing, clingy, always hanging on her grandmother like she was afraid to stand alone. Helen's eyes were distant, morphine starting to blur the edges. I did what was best, for everyone. The old woman needed care. The girl needed to learn independence. I did what was best. Yes, ma'am, I said, you did what was best. She looked at me then, really looked for the first time in 14 months. Her eyes narrowed, trying to focus through the drugs. Do I know you? I smiled, professional, warm. The smile I'd practiced in mirrors, the one that didn't reach my eyes. I'm Maya, Miss Chen, your nurse. She slept. I sat with her until my shift ended, then I went home to my apartment with the jade bracelet on my nightstand and the shoebox of drawings in my closet. I didn't sleep. I made tea, I waited. The end came 3 weeks later. Helen had refused hospice. I'm not dying, she'd snapped at the palliative care consultant, not knowing I was the one who'd recommended the consult, so she died in the hospital, in the same ward where I'd first found her name on a chart. I was the nurse on duty. I asked for the assignment, and because I was senior, because I was reliable, because no one else wanted the death watch, they gave it to me. She was conscious when I came in, barely. The morphine pump was at its limit, but pain has a way of cutting through even the strongest drugs. She looked at me, and this time she saw something. Maybe it was the light. Maybe it was the end clearing her vision. Maybe it was just time. "Maya," she whispered, "your name is Maya." "Yes, Miss Chen." "It is. Lily's granddaughter, the little bunny." Yes, she didn't look afraid. That was the strange thing. She looked relieved, like she'd been waiting for the other shoe to drop for 14 months and was glad it was finally over. "You stayed," she said. "All this time. You stayed to watch me die." "I stayed because you needed care. That's what nurses do." "No." Her hand found mine, the grip weak but certain. "You stayed because you wanted me to know. To understand at the end what I took from you." I didn't deny it. There was no point. The lie between us had always been thin, and death strips everything to truth. "I found her in a facility called Golden Years," I said. My voice was steady, clinical, the tone I used for family consultations when I had to tell them their mother wasn't coming home. She weighed 78 pounds. She was listed as Jane Doe. Her dentures were broken, and they fed her puree from a can because nobody checked why she couldn't chew. She had bed sores down to bone. She died calling my name in Mandarin, and nobody in that building understood her enough to know she wasn't alone by choice. Helen's eyes were wet. Not tears of remorse, I don't think she was capable of that. Tears of recognition. Of finally seeing the shape of what she'd done, reflected in the face of the person who'd cleaned up after it. "I sold the house," she whispered. "The money gone. I know, I found most of it eventually. Took 3 years. You declared bankruptcy. Very clever. Why didn't you?" She coughed, blood on her lips, and I wiped it away because that was my job. "Why didn't you let me die alone? You could have. You should have." I looked at her. At the woman who'd made my grandmother a Jane Doe. Who'd sold my mother's diploma and my childhood drawings and the porch swing where Lily had rocked me to sleep. Who'd taken everything and called it what was best. Because I said my grandmother taught me that the person who leaves is the one who loses. She stayed for me. Every day of my life she stayed. And I stayed for you. Not because you deserved it, because she did. Because her love was stronger than your theft, and I am the proof of that. I held her hand while she died. It took 40 minutes. At the end, her breathing changed, the Cheyne-Stokes pattern. Irregular gaps that stretched longer and longer, the body forgetting its oldest habit. I counted the seconds between each breath. 20, 30, 4 to 5. I didn't look away. I didn't call a code. She had a DNR, and more importantly, she had me. Her last breath was a word. I don't know what it was. Maybe sorry, maybe Lily, maybe nothing at all, just air escaping a body that had finally run out of uses. I closed her eyes. I filled out the paperwork. I went home and slept for 14 hours, and when I woke up I felt nothing. Not victory, not peace. Just the absence of waiting. I used the recovered money, what was left after lawyers and taxes and 3 years of living on ramen, to buy Golden Years Assisted Living. Not the building, the company that owned it. They were bankrupt, under investigation for dozens of violations, and the sale went through for less than the price of a new car. I fired the administrator who'd called my grandmother Jane Doe. I fired the nurses who'd fed her puree and ignored her bedsores. I hired Mandarin speakers, Cantonese speakers, Vietnamese speakers. I hired cooks who knew how to make dumplings and congee and pho. I put a sign over the door, Lily's house. No one is Jane Doe here. I live in the apartment on the first floor, the one that used to be the administrator's office. The shoebox of drawings is on my desk. The jade bracelet is on my wrist. Every Sunday I make dumplings in the kitchen, and the residents help, some with trembling hands, some with minds that wander, all with names that we say out loud every day until everyone knows them. I don't forgive Helen. I don't forgive myself for not coming home sooner, for not seeing the signs, for letting her take Lily before I could keep my promise. Forgiveness is a door I haven't found yet. Maybe I never will, but I open other doors. Every day I open the door to Lily's house and I welcome someone who was forgotten by the people who should have remembered them. I hold their hands. I learn their names. I stay, because that's what Lily taught me, not revenge, not justice, just staying, being there when the world walks away, being the person who doesn't leave. I'm Maya. I'm 34 years old. I'm a nurse, a granddaughter, a woman who once thought forever had a price tag and learned that some things are too expensive to sell. If you're waiting for someone who never stopped searching, or if you're the one doing the searching, stay. Stay one more day, make one more phone call. Drive 4 more hours. The person you love might not have forever, but they have right now, and right now is enough to build a whole life on. See you in the next story.